So let's talk about the electronic handbrake. Something not to be frightened of is actually very convenient having the electronic handbrake, and this video is going to be looking at all of the ways that that handbrake is used. So you could be watching this video as a learner driver that is new to an electronic handbrake, or you could be a full license holder who's just about to get a car that has got an electronic handbrake. And if you're a full license holder, that's the same as me, because this is the first car in all the years that I've been teaching people to drive that has got an electronic handbrake. So the first thing that I did when I knew that I was buying this car, I was straight onto YouTube looking at videos. So if, like me, you've been driving for many years using a manual handbrake, sometimes this new electronic handbrake can seem a little bit confusing. But there might be a few things that you struggle with a little bit, so hopefully this video will help you. So I thought I'd make a video that has everything that you would need to know if you're about to drive a car that has got an electronic handbrake. So everything in general is pretty much very simple, but the only thing that people might struggle with a little bit is doing the hill starts. So there's two ways of taking the electronic handbrake off. There's one by mixing your gas and clutch together to move the car off, and it will automatically release it. And you can also take it off manually. So firstly, when the engine is switched on, the handbrake will illuminate. You can see that on there. So let's take a look at it coming off automatically to start with. So the first thing that you're going to do is put your clutch down. The next thing, into your gear. Okay, so the handbrake will not release on this car if I keep letting the clutch up, which is what I'm gradually doing. It's coming up, it's trying to go, and it's saying no thank you. So if you do get to that point where you've got the clutch coming up and you feel like it's trying to go, and then you realise, oh, I haven't mixed in enough gas, push that clutch down a little bit before you mix in the gas, and then start to let it back up again. And if you do keep letting the clutch up without adding in the gas, the car will eventually stall. Now be careful, because if you do put your car into first gear and you let your clutch up and you're trying to make it move and you can feel it's trying to go, and then the next thing is you think, oh, I need the gas. Be careful if that bite is high and then you put the gas on, because the car will shoot forward. So the mixture of the gas with the clutch coming up is what will allow that handbrake to release. So you can, obviously as a beginner, you're most probably going to want to set your gas first. My car most probably takes up to about 2,000 revs for the handbrake to want to come off when you find that biting point, but you might find that some cars don't quite need as much as that, so you will have to work that out on your car. So depending on what car you're driving, if you are new to driving and you're using the electronic handbrake, you're going to have a good look and see how many revs that you're going to need. But I would advise most probably using the revs to start with. And of course, when a driver is experienced, I don't sit at biting point for moving off on a level. I just, obviously, once I've done my checks and it's safe to move off, I just mix my 2 feet together. That's the gas and the clutch. But generally, having this electronic handbrake does make everything so much easier. You know that as soon as the car is ready to go, it's happy with the mixture, it's going to take it off for you and you don't have to worry about that. So it's exactly the same for going backwards. If you were reversing, you'd put your clutch down, pop it into reverse, and you would set your gas, start to let your clutch up, and the handbrake would come off. So once you've finished driving and you pull up, then you can pull your handbrake up manually. So if you remember, it's the same as the manual handbrake. It comes up to take it to put it on, and it goes down to take it off. So that should be easy to remember. So the next way that you can use the handbrake is to release it manually. So places that you would look at doing that most probably would be downhill. Say for example, you were parked on a downhill slope and you had a car very close in front of you. The last thing you're going to want to be doing is accelerating, having your biting point up, because as soon as the handbrake comes off, the car is going to shoot forward, because it's going to have the mixture of your gas and clutch making the car go forward, and also it's going to have the downhill slope, which is going to feel like an extra accelerator. So if I was moving off downhill and I did have something that I needed to go round and I needed the car to move off slowly, I would put my clutch down to the floor, I'd pop my car into first gear, and then I would put my foot brake fully down. Once I've got that down, I can release the handbrake manually by just pushing that button down. Then obviously, as you would do in a normal car, you would just take your foot brake off, the car would start to move, and then you could do your mixture. So let's show you what happens if you try to take your handbrake off manually without having the foot brake on. So when you try to do this, it needs the foot brake. It's like some form of safety device so that you don't try to take the handbrake off and the car rolls forward. Now I'm going to put the car into first gear and then listen when I try to take the handbrake off without having my foot brake on. It's beeping. And this is what's happening on my dashboard when I try to do that. So it's telling me press the brake pedal down. So when I push my brake pedal down and take it off, it's happy. So let's take a look at the hill start. So that's the bit where I think people struggle with it. I don't have any issue as an experienced driver. I've put my car into gear when I want it to move off, and then once I've done my checks, then I just mix in the gas, let the clutch up like an experienced driver would do on a hill, and it all goes absolutely fine. So usually if you're doing a hill start, you would put your clutch down to the floor, you'd pop your car into first gear, and then you would set your gas so that it's a bit higher than it normally would be. You would then let your clutch up until you feel that bonnet lift. And then that's normally, once you've done your checks, you would take off either your manual handbrake, or that's when the car will start kicking in and taking off the electronic handbrake. So if I was doing a standard hill start, I'd put my clutch down to the floor, pop my car into first gear, and then what I would do is I would set my revs higher. And then what you would do is you would let your clutch up until the bonnet of the car starts to lift. So I'm just going to show you that at the front. So when I'm letting up my clutch, I will let it up until the bonnet lifts. Can you see how that's lifting up? Most probably not that easy, but it is lifting up. And the reason it's lifting up is because the handbrake is basically holding on the back wheels and it's trying to pull away. So sometimes the thing that the learner drivers struggle with the most is if you're doing a hill start normally with a manual handbrake, you would set your revs higher than normal. You would let your clutch up until the bonnet lifts, the car bonnet lifts, because if you see it lift up, you know it's pulling against the back handbrake, which the back handbrake, when I say that, I mean it's holding the back wheels and it's trying to pull away. So you know if it's doing that, you know that when the handbrake comes off, the car's going to move forward. But of course, learner drivers are normally taking it a little bit steadier. So a learner driver would have put the car into first gear, they'll set their gas higher, and then what they'll be doing is maybe trying to let their clutch up gently because they're a bit frightened in case they let it up a bit too quick. And what happens is on the electronic handbrake, it starts to feel the bite and it takes the handbrake off, but it might not be at the point where the bonnet is lifting. So where the learner driver's wanting the car to move forward, what actually happens is as soon as it bites, the car starts to roll back, which obviously isn't great. So what I was doing when I first got this car, I was getting my pupils to put the car into gear and just to practice finding where that bonnet lift is, which is about there. so that they get a bit of a muscle memory to feel where that's going to be, so that they're not letting it up really slowly, and then when it starts to bite, it takes the handbrake off and rolls down the hill. But if you're somebody that's new to driving, a learner driver, or you're somebody that's perhaps not been that confident on doing hill starts, then this is a new technique that I've started using. But a new technique that I've now been teaching them with regards to doing the hill start is this. Clutch down, pop it into first gear, and as long as you know that the road is looking good and you think you're going to be able to move off, let the clutch up first till you get the bonnet lift. Then do all your looks around, and then when you know it's clear to go, squeeze the gas and the handbrake comes off. So what I have found since I've been using this technique, people are a little bit more relaxed about doing the move off on the hill. The only thing is I would say that you want to have a good look around first before you start letting your clutch up to your bonnet lift, because otherwise, if you're sitting for long periods with your clutch at the height of the bonnet lift, those clutch plates are rubbing together for a long period, and obviously that's not great for your clutch. Now, the best thing to do is to go and find a nice quiet hill somewhere and practice the hill starts. That's something I do with my students if anybody's struggling with a hill start, which I must admit, since I've been using this technique, this new technique of getting the bonnet lifting first and then adding in the gas, it has been a little bit easier. So that's something that you might want to try. And again, if you were reversing uphill, you do the same technique as if you're going forward on a hill. So the clutch would go down, pop your car into reverse gear, and if you're an experienced driver, likelihood is you would just be mixing your gas, letting your clutch up, and the handbrake like this would be coming off. But if you are somebody that, like I say, hasn't got that much confidence on the hill starts, or you are a beginner, try the same technique as I mentioned before. Clutch down, into reverse, let your clutch up until the back of the car lifts, not the front, then mix in the gas, and you can see that then the handbrake has just come off. So I have got some students that are learning to drive on my car with an electronic handbrake, and then have got their own private car that they have practice on that doesn't have the electronic handbrake. So occasionally they will think they're driving my car, get the car ready, try to move, wonder why the car isn't moving, and then realise and have to take the handbrake off manually. I occasionally will get into my husband's car driving his, and his has got a manual handbrake, and every once in a while I do almost go to try to move off without releasing the handbrake. But yeah, like I say, you just adapt. But don't worry if your car that you have at home that you're practicing on has got a manual handbrake, but your driving instructor has got an electronic one. It's really good just to go from one to the other. You'll just soon learn how to adapt. If you're somebody that's weak in your left arm, you may have some form of disability, you may drive an automatic car for that reason, so that you don't have to keep moving the gear stick. The electronic handbrake definitely makes life easier. Some handbrakes, where they're positioned in the car, this is manual handbrakes I'm talking about, are sometimes quite a way back, and so sometimes trying to stretch around to pull them up, especially if you're quite short and you sit quite forward, they're not really designed very well for some people that are tiny, and therefore they're trying to reach back to try to get that handbrake off. I know I've spoken to students over the years that have had driving lessons before, and have been in a car that's maybe not suitable for them because the handbrake was quite a long way back. The old Vauxhall Corsa, I know that a few students said that they really used to struggle with that one. And it's like anything new, you just have to get used to it. You know, when I was first driving this car back from the garage, it did feel really strange using the handbrake because, yeah, I'd never used one before. I had had a little look on YouTube, like I said, before I went to pick the car up, but it still did feel very, very strange when I first left the garage, and the funny thing was the very first junction that was at the end of the road was on a bit of a slope, so I was a bit like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But like I say, you just get used to it, and that's me as a driving instructor, driving for years, so it just is learning a new skill. Like I say, don't be frightened of driving it. It does feel a little bit strange to start with. If you are picking up maybe a hire car or maybe a brand new car and you're taking it away from wherever you've purchased it and you haven't had a go before, like I say, don't be in a rush to drive off. Just have a little practice with that handbrake just to start with before you set on your journey. So just to summarise about the use of the electronic handbrake, as long as you're mixing the gas in while you're letting your clutch up, the handbrake will let itself off without any problem whatsoever. If you try to move off without mixing in any gas, the handbrake won't come off. If you want to take it off manually, you must make sure that you push your foot brake on before you press the button down so that it will release it. And if you're doing it on a hill and you're a little bit concerned to start with, try that technique of letting your clutch up until the bonnet lifts first, have your checks, then add in your gas. But like I said, don't sit for long periods with your foot high up on that biting point, because that won't be very good for your clutch. That is going to help burn that out, and clutches are expensive. You are going to find over years to come there are going to be so many more cars that have got the electronic handbrake, and to be honest, when you start going back into a car that has not got the electronic handbrake, it's most probably going to feel quite strange. Now, I think that pretty much summarises everything that you would need to know. But if there is anything that I haven't maybe covered on here and you're unsure of, please drop me a question in the comments and I will do my best to answer that for you.